Peace. What's going on, wonderful people? Welcome back. It is yours truly, Tigo, here on the Mind of Bazel, and we are doing another quote reading today. This reading will cover planetary development sufficient for obvious and direct contact from higher density civilizations, spiritual effects of the moon, service without infringement, basically meaning that does not push against or resist free will, activation of the pineal gland, knowing and working with spirit guides, balancing egoic and spiritual drives, envisioning an ideal planetary transition to fourth density. So quite a few things. If you're not familiar with Quo, the Quo channelings are a collection of spiritual messages from a group of higher density beings, primarily from the fourth, fifth, and sixth densities, who speak as a unified consciousness known as Quo. Like the raw material, these teachings were transmitted through the dedicated work of the LL research team. The channeling sessions began in the mid-1980s, following the conclusion of the Law of One series. The Quo collective includes members of Ra, Latwi, and Hatan, each offering perspectives grounded in love, wisdom, and unity. The questions in these sessions were asked by seekers of truth, and the responses came through the deep trance channeling of Carla L. Ruckert, supported by Jim McCarty and Don Elkins. Quo's language is slightly more accessible than Ra's, but still deeply layered and vibrational in nature. If you'd like to read the full Quo transcripts or explore more of this material, you can visit llresearch.org, where all sessions are available for free. Let's get into it. This channeling takes place on September 14th, 2024. Jim channeling. I am Quo, and I am with this instrument at this time. We would like to take this opportunity to thank all of those entities here within this circle of seeking for joining this day to seek more of the nature of your spiritual journey, that journey that you share with all people on your planet. You, however, are those who are aware that this is your purpose, to seek that which you are, an endless seeking of the one infinite creator that has made all that there is. Everything in the universe is made of the creator, as are you. Thank you for being here and having those queries for us that may expand everyone's knowledge of who they are. We would ask our perennial favor, and we know you've heard this before, but for those who are new, we ask that you take those thoughts and words that we offer in response to your queries with what you would call the grain of salt. For we are journeyers, as are you, on this path of seeking the one. We have our opinions, which we gladly share. Please know that these are our opinions. We could be wrong. So if you will grant us this favor, we have a greater opportunity then to speak to those queries which you have for us. At this time, we'd ask if there is a query to which we may respond. M1. I have a query. This is M. My question is, has humanity reached enough awakened people to achieve the critical point where higher developed civilizations, extraterrestrials, will now begin to make direct and obvious contact with us? I am Quo, and I am aware of your query, my sister. You ask a query which has various facets to our response. The general population of the planet that you know as your Earth, your Mother Earth, is, at this time, not particularly aware of the nature of their spiritual journey and enough conscious awareness to be able to receive a general response that all would know about, hear, feel, and respond to. There are, however, these groups such as this group and many more around this planet that have tuned themselves through the way they live their lives to receive some sort of contact from advanced civilizations that may enhance their own perception of their spiritual journey in ways that we are attempting to do today with each of those present. Many of these have been reported, shall we say, in spiritual circles. There are various civilizations and entities that are the senders of these messages of love, of light, and the unity of all things. That is, that which we wish that each group such as this could share with other seeds, you might say, that are sown to those they meet in their daily round of activities, so that this message from advanced civilizations may spread in a general fashion that is more and more pronounced as time goes on. There are also means of communication with individuals who have what you may call the hunch, the intuition that their life has more meaning, that they are potentially aware of, but have the need for a communication that is below the conscious mind within, shall we say, what you call the dream state, or the meditative state, or the intuitional flashes of inspiring concepts, feelings, and the nature of one's being. These individuals may do as this group may do. They may share this information with others, perhaps in a more confined way of friends and family, and thereby become more of the sowers of the seeds of the truth, the, as you may say, Johnny Appleseeds of spiritual realization. However, we are sorry to say that the planet itself has some difficulties with its population. Your Mother Earth is already within the fourth density of love and understanding, and she wishes for her children to join her there. So there is the support that is given by the very ground upon which you walk that can also provide a subconscious realization of a greater journey. Is there a follow-up query, my sister? M1. Yes, the follow-up query I have is, if you could speak about our moon being an extraterrestrial satellite placed, and how full moons or new moons actually affect us purposely. I am quote, and I am aware of your query, my sister. We find that this type of question is one which moves into the area of what you may call conspiracies that are constructed in order to exercise a type of control over the population of your Mother Earth. The satellite, which is called the moon, is that which moves in regular cycles of its own beingness and has those effects in a natural way upon the population of Earth that is sensitive to such cycles and rhythms. This is a natural function of your satellite that is known as the moon, in its various phases of existence, in shining the reflected light of the sun at various portions of the time period you call the day, so that there may be more inspiration to those who are sensitive to such. Is there any further query, my sister? No, thank you, that's fine. I am quote, and we thank you, my sister. Is there another question at this time? M2. In being of service to others, especially people who have similar things going on in their life or catalysts, and they seem to want your help, and they go down maybe a different path than what you might want to be able to help them, how do we not get over-invested in their outcomes? I am quote, and I am aware of your query, my sister. If we understand your query correctly, you are asking if there is some way in which each of you may be of service to those who are experiencing difficulties in their own life experience without infringing upon their free will. Is this correct, my sister? That is correct, without us experiencing too much pain in our soul for them. I am quote, and we appreciate your clarification. In order to be of service to one which you feel an affection for, because they are friends or family or souls which you have met that you feel a connection to, and you are wishing to be of service, it is most often recognized by the person that you are attempting to serve, that you wish to serve. And if you can make a statement of inspiration that you feel comes from your heart and the love of the Creator that exists within your heart, that will focus their attention on this concept or principle, then you have also planted a seed that may grow on its own, because the seed will need to be watered by this person's attention. And if they did not water the seed, then there would be no infringement on your part. You have done your job, shall we say, your service, by offering that which is your opinion in the same way in which we offer our responses to your queries as our opinions. Is there a further query, my sister? M2, no, thank you. I am quote, and we thank you, my sister. At this time, we shall transfer this contact to the one known as Austin. We are quote, Austin channeling. We are quote, and we greet the circle now through this instrument at this time. This instrument requests that we offer him some grace, for he feels as though much time has passed since we last joined with him in this service, and feels as though there is a bit of rust to be cleaned. And so, we would abide by his request and ease into our connection with him by offering some reflections to this circle upon the sharing that we were honored to witness during what you called your round robin. During this sharing, we witnessed upon your hearts expressing a shared experience of coincidence and anniversary and surrender, and we would applaud this perception of your journey and reflection upon it. For these gifts that you experience called catalysts do tend to circle back around into your lives, and similarly to your celestial bodies that revolve around your sun, enter into your life as an echo or reflection, and even the celebration of that catalyst that was experienced previously and greets you once again. To you may say, check up on you and see how you are doing with the gift that was offered. This operates in concert with what you might identify as coincidence or synchronicity. And as this group is reflecting upon the circumstances that have brought them here to the circle, and also here to this point in your life, we encourage you to witness in looking back upon these coincidences and see a story that appears to be authored. It appears to be constructed and creatively written for you, and you have simply been living out this story that you have agreed to enter into. We would offer further suggestion upon reflecting on this series of coincidences and provide the question for you to bring into your meditation of witnessing the story as it is unfolded in the flow of your life up to this point. What might await you upon your journey if you can but surrender to that flow and allow your life to be guided by that invisible author that has written your story up to this point? If you are able to release your concern about the unknown before you and trust that its author indeed has a plan, and if you could quiet your heart and your mind and hear the voice of this author in every moment, the magic available to you in your life would become even more apparent. This is a lesson that we, those of Quo, continue to refine in our own journeys, for there is a very refined approach to the offering of compassion and wisdom and the surrender of the rhythms and the cycles of the Creator. Having felt that this instrument is now shaking off the cobwebs, so to speak, we ask if there is a query to which we may respond. Questioner: yes, I have a query. Quo, what is the best way to fully activate the pineal gland? And once activated, what is the best way to use it towards the greater good? I am Quo, and I am aware of your query, my sister. We appreciate the opportunity to speak upon this rich topic. For that which you identify as the pineal gland, in some senses, a biological manifestation of that which we have called the indigo ray energy center, and what others within your various cultures have identified as the third eye. That perception that may be awakened upon the path of the spiritual seeker that allows them to, in a sense, pierce the veil and perceive in meaningful ways the rhythms of the Creator that we have spoken about just now through this instrument. This is a powerful evolution for the seeker, and the angle of perceiving this energy center and its biological analog is useful, for it reflects the fact that you, as a mind-body-spirit complex, have aspects to your being that seem to be distinct, such as the biological pineal gland and the metaphysical indigo ray energy center. But once the illusion of complexity is removed, these are indeed the same thing. And so, in unblocking and opening and activating the pineal gland, you also open the indigo ray energy center. As the question is framed in the sense of exploring the biological aspect of this mechanism, we would approach it by encouraging you to first lay the foundation of familiarity with your biological manifestation, that being your body complex that is alive and moves and is active within the third density. For when we speak about activating the indigo ray energy center, we may speak about the metaphysical or the spiritual circumstances that can lead to such an activation. This would be the processing of catalysts that is triggered by and triggers blockages within the energy centers. Such may also be true for your physical body and how you relate to it, and its evolution upon your spiritual journey as well. How your body expresses itself in new and unique ways as you become more and more familiar with it upon your journey. This activation of the pineal gland, as you've called it, is a result of what we would call regular discipline in checking in with the body, coming to understand these sensations and the feelings and the pains and the things that stimulate the body as you move through your daily round of activities. Understand where in the body various emotions and experiences seem to live, and in doing so you can discover that your body indeed manifests the spiritual life that is inside of you into the physical, that your body is an expression of your spiritual being, and that you can influence your body from a spiritual approach. But you may also utilize your body to further influence your spiritual journey by taking care and honoring and respecting its needs and desires, and offering guidance to it so that it may move in ways that support your spiritual journey and your so-called long-term goals, including the goal of activating the pineal gland. This is the foundation of the activation, the regular discipline of becoming familiar with the body. And similarly to opening the energy center, we find that there is a natural progression, that as you continue to become familiar with your body itself, you become more and more sensitive to those things that touch upon the pineal gland and its associated biological functions. And as you learn more and more about those things that you experience in your life, you can hone in on them, bring them into a more regular pattern within your life, so that this activation of your pineal gland also becomes more regular. We cannot prescribe a specific path, but can suggest that such understandings of the body can be most easily found in those aspects of the diet, the physical fitness, the love and acceptance of the body, and the gentle, patient relationship with the body. Each individual will have a unique configuration of these dynamic relationships with the body that will eventually lead, if intended, to a greater and greater activation of the pineal gland. And this all occurs in our experience and perception alongside the spiritual growth. It may be seen to be more abstract or emotional or feeling based rather than physical within the body. But as we have spoken, these things are intricately related, even to the point of being considered the same once you pierce the illusory nature of your mind-body-spirit complex and the creation about you. Is there a follow-up to this query, my sister? Questioner, no thank you. Quo, we are Quo, and we thank you, my sister. Is there another query to which we may respond? H, hello Quo. What kind of spiritual practice could we take that would help us with understanding and knowing our spirit guides, who they are, and just to be able to grow with that? We are Quo, and we are aware of the query, my sister. We appreciate as always the opportunity to speak upon this query as well, for it is a common question among your peoples, particularly those who awaken to their spiritual natures but do not have a regular perception of those guides and beings outside of perception that can influence and aid you upon this journey. There are some among you who have an innate perception of these guides, but for the most part, the incarnational circumstances are designed as such that most of these influences remain just outside of your ability to perceive them directly. Part of this reason is because the effort made to reach out and connect in a more direct way is itself a very meaningful practice. It is an act of faith. It is an important part of the journey for the spiritual seeker to recognize that there are influences beyond what one can immediately perceive and understand. And these influences can indeed be loving and comforting and supportive, and that they remain outside of your perception until you, as a sovereign being, request and accept them into your life. We mention this because it is an important aspect of this dynamic that the very desire and attempt to reach out and connect is a meaningful spiritual practice that should not be dismissed as merely a step upon the journey, but rather is an integral aspect of the entire journey itself. To respond more directly, we can suggest various practices with the understanding that, just as with the previous query, each individual is unique. Each individual has set up specific instructions and guidelines, you may say, to how they can or have the potential to interact with the guides. And so the process is one of experimentation and trial and error, you may say, among these practices. The most foundational aspect is the setting of the intent, the expression inwardly and outwardly through meditation and prayer to connect with these influences and invite them into your life. We find that a daily regular practice of this request and opening to these influences is most conducive to any practice or any manifestation of this connection to your guides. Once this daily practice is in place, there can be more direct interactions or attempts at interactions, such as in the dream state. If the seeker finds that they have a vivid life in their sleeping time and delivers divine messages, then these messages can be a medium for the guides to communicate in a very direct way with the seeker in the dream state. Additionally, one may practice acts of creativity and opening the well of inspiration in the waking life, and find that one may enter a state very similar to this state that we utilize for vocal channeling, in which there is a flow of information and inspiration that comes through the entity and is manifest in some way. But you must have some practice that allows it to manifest, some ability to bring it into being within your reality, such as the art, the writing, the singing. We find that these types of creative expressions are most powerful in tapping this well of inspiration through which your guides may communicate. In addition to this, we may say that we have found that as this practice of daily intention setting and opening, and the additional step of bringing the guidance into manifestation in the physical form or in a way that can be perceived, then the barriers between space and time and space, or the seen and the unseen realms, can become thinner and start to dissolve more and more. Your regular perception begins to include guidance from your guides and those entities who wish to help you. The intuition which feeds every moment of your experience begins to contain very perceivable qualities of guidance from outside of you that you can more easily access and utilize it in your daily life moment by moment. This can sometimes happen spontaneously and without discipline, but we find that the benefit of these spontaneous openings is much diminished compared to the entity who is able to take upon themselves the regular practice of accepting these influences and attempting to perceive these influences so that they can be received in a grounded state that is more regular to the seeker and speaks more to the miracles that happen on a day-to-day basis and don't seem so extravagant. Once the seeker develops this familiarity with the miraculous, these perceptions of your guides can become much more intense and direct, as you might learn about in the tales of your various disciplined mystics and seekers who have offered information about these perceptions and guides for your peoples throughout your ages. Is there a follow-up to this query, my sister? J. No, thank you. We are Quo, and we thank you, my sister. And this time, we will take leave of this instrument and pass the contact to the one known as Gary. We are Quo. Gary channeling. We are those known to you as the principle of Quo. We blend our energies with this instrument as we sense into your hearts with the appreciation for that which you carry in your journeys, the stress and doubt, fear and worry that you navigate, but which brings you here to this moment in a quest, as you may see it, to find that inner peace that calls to you to more deeply discover and embrace that service which is yours to offer. At this time, we would ask if there is a query to which we may respond. We are those of Quo. Trisha. I have a question, Quo. In our current configuration of third density, we assign a lot of power to the ego, and with that comes responsibility. And the ego can often be a great catalyzer for our spiritual evolution, which in part seems counterproductive if the ultimate goal is to release the individualized self-awareness. So I would like to ask, Quo, if there is a means by which we can balance the egoic and spiritual drives and find more grounding in presence that doesn't also leave us less motivated in our spiritual pursuits, if that makes sense. Is there a balance between present moment awareness and egoic pursuit that allows for a more full and vibrant expression in this incarnation, that allows for spiritual evolution without becoming more divided? We have received your query, our sister. We appreciate the balanced nature of this query and its scope, which takes in the art of living a life on a planet as a seeming individual who is moved and pulled and pushed by the desires of an individual. of being one among and separate from many, while simultaneously feeling the gravity and the call of that inner light, which is awoken within the self, which calls one into higher seeking in order to pierce the illusion of separation and to seek once more the unity of all things. There is within this seeker a full range or spectrum of experience and desire running up and down the energy centers. We will begin by clarifying and reminding that there is no wrongness or judgment for desires expressed at any station along this spectrum of energy, perception, and experience. There is no judgment, even and especially for those entities among your peoples who are fully asleep, you may say, within the illusion, which is to say, fully identified with the thoughts, the body, the finite aspects of a limited incarnation, and the ways of a world that is also, for the most part, forgetful of the divine nature and self and reality. It is, you may say, okay to be in this state. It is okay to be human. It is okay, if you wish to use the concept of ego, to be driven by that ego and the egoic desires. It is, in fact, a natural and normal response to the veiled condition repeated on planet after planet. It is not an unfortunate byproduct of an illusion per se, but a carefully designed construct to help facilitate the journey of separation so that the choice, through the faculties of will and faith, may be made for the journey of return. When that journey will awaken and commence for the seeker is unique. Some may take this quickly, some may take many, many incarnations for this to awaken. But once this journey gets underway, the self asks of the self and of its world questions, which are not so centered in the questions of survival and personal identity and social identity, but the questions centered in love, truth, clear seeing, and eventually the encompassing and the making space for the sacred core dimension of life. Then the journey may accelerate, and these questions of balance, which are contained in your query, become more and more important to the seeker. The spiritual journey, we may clarify, is not one that seeks to squash or obliterate that self, which may be called egoic. To the spiritual seeker, who burns brightly, who follows the path consistently, through the valleys of the incarnation, through the dark nights and the many deaths, losses, sacrifices that often accompany the path, the seeker who persists, even when seemingly surrounded in darkness, to trust that there is a light, that the process will, if trusted, lead one to that which one seeks, which is forever and always the present moment. There may come that gradual or perhaps even dramatic realization of the illusory nature of the ego, or synonymously, illusory individual self, such that the veil itself can be dismantled over time. The illusion can be dissolved. All can, while within the third density human state, be seen again as one. Though there is a metaphorical richness to be mined in the frame of battle, ultimately it is not an adventure of conflict. The ego is not an antagonist or a villain or a bug in the system, or something to be gotten rid of. It is that construct which is formed by many inputs, including the impact of the environment, of other selves, and of catalysts that are experienced within the incarnational journey, and even more fundamentally, the intentional programming of the pre-incarnational soul in concert with its higher self to create this framework or construct of the ego. The individual itself is a learning vessel, one designed to be imbalanced and imperfect so that certain lessons may be facilitated, and the balance of seeking to see through the illusion of the individual self, while simultaneously seeming to be a manifest individual self within your plane, is not to seek to escape the latter, but to love the latter unconditionally, to accept the self as the self. This acceptance can be seen to have two levels. For conceptual understanding may say a dual way of expressing, and that is first, the acceptance of the imperfect self and the self's biography, and the many choices and the seeming missteps that have been made, the loved ones that have been hurt, the misapprehensions, the missed opportunities, the forgetting, the losing of one's way, the harm especially that one has rendered to oneself, the many and often hidden places within the self where there are mechanisms of judgment, judgment of the self, of the moment, of others. These discovered aspects of the self can be over time and with work accepted and with sweet mercy forgiven, that these weights may be laid down upon the road, that the self may lighten its heart and its being. And through such work, these individual self or ego does not necessarily vanish, but becomes less opaque, becomes less of a separate, walled-in entity, less in compulsive need to defend its existence from perceived threats of diminishment, from perceived mirrors that remind it of its core, hidden fear of inadequacy, insufficiency, and insubstantiality. Surrender, from this perspective, is a difficult work to arrive at, because it is the surrender of, as you may see it, the grip of the ego upon its illusory, freestanding existence. The ways that the self has crafted a separate identity depend also upon illusory constructs of comparison, constructs that feed the identity by its acquisition of things, be those things knowledge, money, status, property, personal achievement, perceiving of the self in some virtue that is appealing to the self. These outer costumes that the self may wear, even be they those which are fashioned in a positive sense, still create the sheath of outer identity, which may obscure the inner identity of the soul nature, and even deeper still, the inner identity of the self that is not other than the Creator. And through this work of knowing this imperfect outer shell, forgiving this imperfect outer shell, surrendering this imperfect outer shell, that shell, as it were, becomes transparent to the One. That transparency necessarily and without effort upon the seeker's part shines outwardly in radiant style to those about one and to the world about one. But that transparency, first and foremost, is known to the inner self, to the consciousness. One can, in this ascending upward journey, become more conscious of the Creator within the self, the boundless infinite beingness or ground of beingness that is the self's true nature. Not running away from this outer imperfect personality shell, but realizing that while including the personality shell, the true self is not this outer entity. The true self is playing a role that can be unconditionally loved and not resisted, a role that can be embraced. But the self's awareness expands to deep interior levels, the circumference expanding and expanding outward to realize that the self, the true self, has no bounds. The true self is not born. The true self does not die. Your body may experience disease. Your limbs may be torn from your body. You may be upon the stage of the incarnation, attacked or accused. You may suffer devastating loss. You may experience all manner of limitation and suffering. These things happen to you in your emotional body as responses. And this catalyst is processed through a framework that was designed as you came into the incarnation, that was further modified as you underwent an incarnation that has time within it, ages of your own past habits and biases and karma. This catalyst seems to happen to you and is processed through these circuits of energy centers that you have designed and developed. But in your awareness, you know, not upon an intellectual level, you know on a foundational level, you know in your heart, in that heart that you are inhabiting, that these are waves upon the surface, and that you are the ocean, and in that ocean is stability, permanency, and peace. You can witness these waves. You can have clarified reaction to the waves that you may navigate the circumstances as needed, so that you may find creative ways to be of service, to shine love. But in this awareness, you are not enslaved or shackled by the storms upon the surface of the ocean. You experience them, certain they are in your field of awareness. They may touch you, they may impact you, but your awareness has deepened and expanded into the ocean, into its depths, that you will be less pulled and pushed. You will cling less to what is happening upon the surface in some attempt to defend that which is insubstantial. You may rest with calm repose, with equanimity that is not attached nor avoidant, but can accept the moment as it is, as if the self had chosen for exactly this circumstance to unfold. because this self is in tune and in harmony with the universe and understands that the self is not a victim of circumstance, but that free will is unfolding ever in perfection. And in this balance, we were describing the two layers or natures of acceptance. There is the acceptance of the imperfect self, and more deeply, there is the acceptance and allowance and permission of the perfect self. There is the understanding that can come to your hearts because it is your nature. It is not something you become. It is not something you earn. It is already your birthright in your nature to know that you are truly perfect beings. Embodying this, allowing this, trusting and accepting this in your awareness bleeds out, radiates out into acceptance of the apparent distortions as well, including those of the ego. It is not an either or, it is a coexistence. It is a both and. The self rests in a balance between the apparent distortions and the total perfection of the self. The self rests in a balance between seeking to become and knowing that the self already is. Rest in that balance between an ego which feels that it is incomplete and unwhole, and an awareness that knows that whatever happens, whatever choice is made, the self is already whole, already complete. And in this balanced awareness, the self serves as a beacon to other selves who have this same birthright, this same awareness, but who, like so many of you, have forgotten intentionally so that they could play a game. The thing is, as you may say, the game includes suffering. And it is that suffering that you, as a positively oriented seeker, wish to speak to help alleviate, not necessarily by doing the lifting for anyone, but reminding them that through forgiveness, the forgiveness of the already forgiven true nature, that they can let down their weight, they can choose to, over time, and through work and consciousness, release and heal, and use that suffering in an instructive manner. We would conclude by speaking to this recognition of the illusory nature of the individual self. This is, while much closer, so to speak, to ultimate truth, a much less distorted representation of beingness, a sort of pinnacle work, you may say, an apex work. We give this instrument the image of the point upon the pyramid or the mountaintop. It is, though we are reluctant to speak in terms of linear sequence or causality in the temporal sense, it is the capstone work that rests upon a mighty amount and quality and intensity of work that preceded it, the work of all the balancing, all the knowing, all the accepting, the work of one's daily catalyst of healing the relationships, of healing the self, of making exploration after exploration into love and finding where the self has abused it and misunderstood it and kept it even from the self and from others, of learning to speak and to see with truth and honesty and clarity, to balance the imperfect and perfect, so on and so forth. Resting on and propelled forward by this work, the self may indeed move into the indigo ray and may stand at the precipice of infinity, stand at that gateless gate and peer out. One may see it, or rather open up in order to let that sacred truth of the true self make contact with the individual self, with the ground of the earth, that the sacred dimension within the self may transmute the chemical body and the mind and the thoughts of the self and the environment around the self, that all once again becomes holy. It is possible in this place that the illusory self vanishes, so to speak, which is not to say that the past has been erased, that all past habituated tendencies within the incarnational stream have been eradicated, or that the self has no personal color or personal flavor that is unique to the self and its unique journey. For it is a unique representation of the Creator that had an experience like no other across the infinite creation. It is just to know that the self, this individual self, was but one wave, and the self is an ocean. The individual self, being a drop or the river, has merged back into the ocean. The self knows, not upon an intellectual level, that there never was separation, there never was ignorance, even that the self had been the self all along, and that self is the all self, is one with all things. The self's motivation then do not arise from the egoic being, for there is no sense of there being the separate self. The separate self is not the existence of a body, the existence of thoughts within the mind, or the accumulated memories of seemingly past experiences. This illusory self is the conviction that there is a separate self. It is a core program, a core story. It is that which becomes dissolved in the recognition of the self as the creator. Having channeled for quite some time through this instrument, we will now transfer our contact to the one known as Jim. We are those of Quo. Jim channeling. I am Quo, and once again with this instrument. At this time, we would ask if there is a final query. Gary. Yes, Quo. This question comes from E. She writes, I was interested in the aspect of holding space for a smoother than described transition, and since Ra only spoke of the transition that we on this planet are likely to have, I'm keen to find out what an ideal transition looks like so that I can actualize, materialize, and hold space for that. Yeah, that's the question. I am Quo, and I believe that we understand the query referring to an individual transition rather than a planetary transition. Is this correct? Gary. Thanks so much for asking for clarity. I could have clarified that. It is definitely about a planetary transition. Ra describes that ours is not going very smoothly, with great disharmony and so forth. So the questioner wants to know, on a planet that has greater harmony, what does a more ideal transition look like between third and fourth density? I am Quo. Thank you for the clarification of this question. There are many times throughout the experience of the infinite creator and its infinite creation that there has been the ability of a planetary population to find a cohesion of their seeking qualities that have brought them together in what you may call the social memory complex. This is a general way of describing how hundreds, thousands, millions of individual mind-body-spirit complexes can utilize their pre-incarnated choices to utilize within the incarnation these choices by processing the catalyst that is their food for growth. The catalyst may be of many forms of difficulties of expanding one's perceptions of oneself, of another self, of the world around them as being more and more the one creator that lives and breathes in each. This is a process which takes, in most cases, many, many lifetimes and perhaps even more than one major cycle upon a planet to accomplish. For this is a journey, a beginning journey into the concept of infinity, and that concept of finity that each spiritual seeker experiences before it becomes totally aware of the nature of the blending of energies being possible, so that there is a movement forward of more and more of the spiritual beingness of each spiritual seeker. That spiritual beingness is the one creator. When the ability of the prana, the intelligent energy of the one creator, is able to move through each entity's red, orange, and yellow energy centers, and then up into the heart of the green-ray energy center, the love of the one creator, then there is the possibility for each entity that experiences the love of the creator and sees it within others, as well as the self, to move forward into the social memory complex. This is the great work. This is what each here is working studiously upon. This is what all seekers of truth desire. Those who are able to accomplish this must be able to pre-incarnatedly program this journey that is based upon previous incarnations and the journeys that were made there, in opening to this heart, into opening to the love of the one infinite creator, to see it within all, to feel it within its own being. This is a process which ideally would occur within one 25,000-year major cycle. However, in many cases, it is necessary to move forward into another 25,000-year cycle when there is an additional number, shall we say, of seekers who are able to do this movement into the green way of love. In many cases, the third cycle is necessary for this to occur. So what is ideal in general sense is that this will occur for all of the population of the planet within 3 cycles of 25,000 years. If this occurs within one 25,000-year cycle, then you have a planet that is mostly populated by those who are what you may call more adept at working with their catalyst of seeing that which is difficult and growing from it, and seeing all about them as being the same as the self, the one infinite creator. Thus, what is the most ideal is this, seeing of the self as the one creator, and seeing each other self as the one creator, and seeing all things as the one creator, and moving forward as a social memory complex. And the journey continues into the fourth density of love and understanding, the journey that is sought by all within the third density. At this time, we would thank each entity here that is upon this journey of seeking to open the heart to continue on that journey, for we feel your open heart moving through all portions of this experience this afternoon, making the heart the center focus of each entity's experience, seeing the heart of each other entity opening in love and light. We thank you for calling for our assistance on this journey, for we are as you, still making this journey through the densities of creation into the octave of completion. And we are all not just seeming to be the creator, but are indeed the one infinite creator. We are those of quote, and at this time shall take our leave of this group and this instrument. Thank you each again for your love, your light, the joy of your being. Adonai, Basu, Boragas. Yes, indeed. Another amazing quote channeling. There was so many gems in there. One about the ego and the nature of the ego kind of being built upon the illusion in general, but it being needed so that you can experience that separation, so that you can then experience the contrast, so you can learn more about the self. And the individualized self, which is illusory, essentially existing between the nature of ourself, the true nature of ourself, which is infinite, and then this portion of ourself that has come here to be imperfect, which would be then called uniqueness. I also felt the description of how to awaken the third eye was more unique, definitely speaking on going deeply inside the self, feeling all the sensations, feeling all the emotions, etc., and then allowing oneself to feel all of those things and then not experience them as something to resist. So by that acceptance then occurring, the energy can rise, piercing the first three chakras, then the heart chakra rising up, then piercing intelligent infinity. As you can see, quote channelings are always on a higher level, always something that I'd love to read and ingest. If you want to hear more of this, just know that it'll be coming at least once a week. And I'll also be doing the raw material readings as well, where I break down portions from the raw material and give my insights. If you need that for quote channelings as well, let me know. But I feel like the quote channelings are far more straightforward and a little bit more easy to digest than the raw material. But I appreciate everybody supporting me. Much love to all of you guys, and there'll be more to come soon. Much love. Peace.